Is that better, Anthony? What do I need to do? Yeah, sorry. Better. Good evening, everyone. Going to call the June 20th, 2023 meeting of the Woodbridge Board of Ed to order at 7:05 p.m. with a reminder to all those watching and participating remotely to kindly mute your microphones to avoid any background noise. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting consistent with Connecticut Public Act 22-3. Public may attend in person or electronically via WebEx. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available on the district website. I will call the roll. Maria Madonick, present. Sarah Beth Delpreet is not with us this evening.
I'm here.
Oh, Sarah Beth Delpreet is remote. Thank you. Jay Dahya. Here. Brooke Hopkins. Here. Jeff Hughes. Here. Stephen Lauren. Michael Strambler is not on yet, but hopefully we'll be able to attend remotely. Erin Williamson.
Here.
And I'm Lynn Kiev. Staff in attendance this evening include Ms. Vonda Tenza, Superintendent, Ms. Donna Coonan, Director of Business and Operations, Ms. Carrie Borcherding, Director of Special Services, Ms. Annalisa Sherman, Principal, Mr. James Sapia, Assistant Principal, attending remotely, and Ms. Marcia DeGennaro, Clerk of the Board, attending remotely. I'd ask everyone in attendance to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Correspondence. Sarah Beth, is there any correspondence this evening?
No, anything can be found in board books.
There's actually one letter that has been received by the board just before 4 p.m. today, and that letter can be found posted online in board book. Letter was in regard to a parent expressing concerns about field day. Moving on to 1D, public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? If you are remote, would you please raise your hand in the participants list? Roll twice, I don't see any hands raised. Anyone in person, public comment? Okay. Moving on to the PTO update. I don't know if there's a PTO update since the school year ended and our last meeting. Rushi was kind enough to give us an overview of the year and the PTO. So I don't see anyone here to give a PTO update. We will move on to consent agenda. The minutes from the May 16th regular meeting are included in this evening's consent agenda, along with a budget narrative, a budget summary, the detailed financial report, and the combining financials. Also included in the consent agenda this evening are the following policies for 30-day review: 9132 standing committees, 9132.2 standing committees policy, 9232.3 standing committee curriculum, 9132.4 standing committee finance, 9132.5 Standing Committee Facilities, and 9133 Special Committees / Advisory Committees. Does anyone from the board wish to extract anything from tonight's consent agenda for discussion? Maria?
I wish to extract 2 act policies for 30-day review. The committee is going to review those again before we bring them to the board for 30-day review.
Okay, so I'll need a motion to I mean, hold on a second. Marcia, maybe you can help me. Do I need a second to the extraction motion?
Yes, there will be, it actually becomes 2 motions. You will need to act on the extraction. They can remove
then-
the policies and
then vote on.
then
rest
vote
of
on the consent agenda.
Perfect. Do I have a second to the motion to extract all of the policies from the consent agenda? Stephen? Motion made by Maria, seconded by Stephen. All those in favor? Sarah Beth, are you in favor?
Yes, in favor.
Okay, so that would be unanimous at this point, Marcia. So now I need a motion to accept the consent agenda that includes the minutes from the May 16th regular meeting and all the financial reports. Do I have a motion to accept those? Maria, do I have a second? Brooke? Motion made by Maria Madonick, seconded by Brooke Hopkins to accept the consent agenda with the extraction of the policies. All those in favor?
Yes,
Sarah Beth?
in favor. Yes.
Unanimous, Marcia, thank you. Okay, so we don't need to put policy on the agenda for later because we're going to review, as you said in the motion, we're going to review those again.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
If anybody wanted to review them, though, they are in your board packet and you're welcome to bring comments forward to the policy.
Do you want to say something about that under new business?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll move those policies to new business. Moving on to reports, superintendent's report. Rhonda.
Good evening. So our students are out of the building, and I just want to say I've learned many things in my first 6 months as superintendent. And the first thing I've learned in June is that the last weeks of school do not wind down. These are busy times. The days seem even busier without the students, and they're definitely a little bit lonelier. So the first 6 months have been very rewarding for me, but so far, for those who say summer is a quiet time, I'm not sure that fits for a superintendent. Enrollment, we ended with 866 students, and that's where we were, I believe, last month, and we are currently in the middle of kindergarten registration. We did a strong push at the beginning, and we have 113 young learners already joining us for kindergarten next year. So that's a nice size. We're watching it carefully. Teacher of the Year, I did send something out, kind of announcing this, but we were so proud at our annual breakfast to identify Lisa Rosner as our 23-24 Teacher of the Year. You'll hear more about this in the fall, but I did just want to let you know, she started as a TA in 2008 and became a special education teacher in 2013. She's worked with students with developmental abilities in a variety of grade levels. And she's described as, I had to do some research, but I have met her and know her. She's creative, flexible, friendly, and supportive, which are all excellent qualities that we do need in education. She provides a positive, safe, learning, and nurturing environment. Her daily compassion and sincere interest in each of her students helps to ensure that homeschool partnerships are meaningful. I can vouch for this. She's highly respected by administrators, teachers, and families. And we're very proud that she will represent all of our great teachers next year with the honor of teacher. So just for board members to hold their calendar, and I think Lynn will talk about this a little bit later. July 17th, we have a regular board meeting. Prior to that, we will feed you and lure you here from 5 to 7 for an in-person working meeting that we can then review our mission and vision and goals, set them for the year. So that's important. Just very quickly, hot off the press this afternoon, the last 4 days have been very busy in this room. Students left. 30 teachers came right in. We had Dr. Michael Rafferty, and I think it's Walter Wakeman, a colleague of his, come in, and we did very intense curriculum work from 8 to 2. Lots of candy, lots of snacks, lots of professional learning and thinking, huge success. So I look forward to sharing more of that with you, but as it was so hot off the press today, we haven't even had time to kind of pull through, but very, very exciting. Jimmy Sapia's words were, it was fire. And I had to like look that up. It means cool. So, just looking ahead to next year, I just want to mention this, that the CSDE is in fact rehauling the state evaluation plan for educators and administrators. They've been saying they're going to do this for a few years now. They're getting closer. That's exciting. So we anticipate that next year there will be sessions for professional learning that teachers and administrators have to go through, and some shifting, a lot of conversation at our professional development evaluation committee, our PDEC. It starts as soon as tomorrow. I have a webinar kind of giving me some oversight from the state. So I remind you of this just so that you're aware of how hard our teachers work, not only, to stay current with curriculum for our teachers, but they have a lot of professional learning on their own that they have to do to make sure that they're meeting the state expectations. And we're proud of them, and they better rest up. It's gonna be busy. I did share again a communication with the staff and community regarding our upcoming summer vacation. I'm not going to reread it to you. I did share it in one of my weekly updates, but there were some words in there that somebody told me years ago, and it's just that, I hope during the summer that you can find some time for health and relaxation and traditions, because I really do believe that traditions make us stronger and they can sustain us. So kind of uphold some of your previous traditions that you've had and try to create a few new ones, because your family members will honor those for years to come. So, I also finally would like to recognize our retiring staff members. We have 2 para-educators. Jill Camonaco, she started in 1997, so she's been here a little over 25 years. That's amazing. As a special education para-educator, and she's implemented, like I was reading, a variety of student-based programs and skills over the years. The staff all commented that she was so flexible, so kind, very skilled, very student-centered, and spent a lot of time outside of the school day and extended day as well, which is a tribute to her dedication. Kathy Adamovich, that name is familiar. Her husband also works in some of our other programs. She started in 1997 as well. They actually started about a week apart. Started as a pre-K TA, paraeducator, and kind of worked her way up through many grades. Staff have commented that she's very flexible in meeting student needs, and also gave her time outside of the school day with recreation and summer camp programs. So both have been very consistent, members of our school community, and are so involved and have made an impact, and will definitely be missed. We appreciate their service. So a little bit later, I'm gonna, reference a few of the other things that we need to tell you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I will just make a couple of comments. One, in regard to the teacher of the year, Lisa Rosner is having had the opportunity to work with her, an amazing educator in our building. She has such a talent with our special education students, and I congratulate her on behalf of the board. Jill Calamonico and Kathy Adamovich, the heart and soul of Beach Road School while they were here. And certainly on behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to express our congratulations to them. on their well-earned retirement. And, but they certainly will be missed. Marcia, I'd like to make note, and for the public that's watching, that Mike Strambler, board member, has joined us at 7:14 remotely. So welcome, Mike. Any other questions or comments on the superintendent's report this evening? Annual wellness.
Okay, so part of our wellness policy, which is in the 6,061.42, with a few decimals, outlines some expectations for an annual update to the board. We have a really nice, robust policy in our district that really shows our value of the whole child. And that's to be a credit to our community. So the wellness report is supposed to touch on a few things at a minimum, and you can add additional things. In the effort of brevity, we honored the minimum and added one little thing. We have to touch on what we offer for monthly menus, a la carte items, any other food sales. Currently, we don't have any in the district. We are potentially re-examining maybe selling after school, back with the vending machine that we had during COVID. Physical activity opportunities and our physical fitness tests. So I don't know if Anthony, if you could call that up. Thank you. I did put something in board book, very brief. So most of this information is available on our website. We have a lovely cafeteria menu. Jane Ruddy does, again, a phenomenal job with this. So at the next slide, Anthony, you'll see that we have available daily a variety of, milks and meats and hard-boiled eggs and yogurts. And so I just snipped a few things. I gave you a 1-week menu. I can tell you, I walk by, it smells great every day. Ernie's Pizza is a hit on Wednesdays. And the a la carte items are also a hit, and they're all approved by the state, and they're all on the healthy food snack list. And there are, many great things. As a matter of fact, later we'll have some of our whole wheat baked goldfish, and they're very good. So that information is available to our community at a fingertip access. Jane does a lovely job with that. Thank you, Anthony. Physical activity. I just put a snapshot up here. I'm not going to read it all to you, but all of our students do have physical education for a number of minutes, at least an hour every 6-day cycle. And they have 30 minutes of health every 6 days. They participate in grades 4 and 6 in the annual Connecticut State Physical Fitness Assessment that addresses certain areas, and we have certain criteria based on grade levels and benchmarks that they need to meet. Our PE and health department does a wonderful job preparing them and keeping it in an ongoing fun fashion for practice with these areas. Outdoor physical activity is something that is highly valued by our district. As long as the weather permits, we are outside for a minimum of 20 minutes a day. We got a lot of movement breaks. I am constantly seeing kids in the hall doing our ball by the cafeteria. We have a field day, Arts Week. There's always something connected to Arts Week with movement. We have whole school walks that the principal and assistant principal conduct repeatedly throughout the year. They started it with COVID and fell in love with it. They're very fun. And jump rope for heart. So we have a lot of other, little activities that are also planned. And the last piece that is not part of our required policy that I did want to include was the Tools for Schools Committee is very active in this district. And there was a lapse. They reassembled after COVID. They kind of started off a little bit this year, and they're going to go back at it full force next year. They conducted their survey. Normally they do it in the spring, but this time around, they did the fall survey, and then in the spring, Vito did a custodial satisfaction survey to give a little bit data that's different. And the satisfaction, what was very impressive, was well over the 95% range in almost all of the areas in terms of room cleanliness, attitude and attention of the custodian assigned to your section. He doles them out. They're such a great group. We, did a walkthrough the other day of the building, starting to look at some areas, and I have to say, we have some very neat teachers, but our custodians are neater and more organized. It was amazing. So Tools for Schools will reconvene again in the fall, and we will continue our Quinnipiac Valley Health Partnership, where they walk through and give us suggestions as well. So Any questions on our annual health update?
I have one question. So I was driving 6 fifth graders. And the one question that came up, or one concern, is there's never enough learning space.
This is true.
So they said the later students who then, I think what happens is on that day, students who bring in lunch don't bring in lunch. So we get a substitution effect. So that was the biggest concern, and I thought that was pretty good. So I think I'd raise that here. That's the other thing as well. They run out of the ice. You know. I think we got both that.
Fifth
They're
graders,
going into sixth.
last year lunch, first complaint.
Yeah.
Like, forte and angry. fifth grader.
But I did tell them they should work on this.
They
They should say what I suggested. They go to Lisa and say how they could figure out this problem. But nobody volunteered.
So I noticed, Jay, that Mrs. Roddy from, our wonderful cafeteria, director and supervisor is online tonight. So I'm sure she's taking notes at home about Ernie's pizza and ice cream.
Right.
And I do think that those comments that the kids really want to have lunch at school is such a testament to Jane and the cafeteria staff. So Jane out there in cyberspace, kudos to you for having wonderful offerings for the kids for lunches. So thank you for that. Anything else on wellness? Okay, we're going to move on to reconciliation of the 2023-2024 budget. That would be based on the cut that the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance made of $208,240 from the budget we proposed. So I'm going to turn that over to you two.
Yep, we're gonna tag.
Thank
team
you.
this. So this evening, the board is charged with adjusting our proposed budget to meet the town approved amount of $17,017,091 for next year, the 23-24 school year. So that number returns our budget to the original proposal by interim superintendent Syriac in December, plus a small additional reduction of $50,000. The $17,017,090 represents a total reduction of $208,240 from our Board of Education approved budget of $17,225,331. So I worked alongside Donna Coonan, our Director of Business Service and Operations, and our administrative team to really analyze and identify areas of reduction to our proposal for the board's consideration, which we have shared as members of the board, that will allow us to continue to support and advance our mission, vision, and goals of the Woodbridge School District, and look forward to discussing them with the board this evening. So our recommendation, my recommendation as superintendent, is that we honor the original proposed budget of the superintendent, which removed things like the additional STEAM teacher that was put back, remembering that at the end of next school year, we should have a teacher available because we have a bubble class that's going into 6th grade right now, and we won't need that additional section at the end of next year. So reducing that, reducing the related payroll taxes and health benefits, reducing the paraeducator payroll taxes and health. We had some pluses and minuses. There were some Seymour's additions that we had to make. We are proposing that we take the custodian that works in the cafeteria, predominantly monitoring cafeteria during the day for 4 hours, but also our recycling efforts, putting that into the cafeteria funds, very appropriate. Some health insurance from some cafeteria staff back into that cafeteria fund as well. We also had a savings of our Ezra nurse contribution that's based on enrollment, and the real enrollment numbers came back lower. So all of those savings together brought us to the reduction that we needed. So our recommendation is to honor that work and go back to that original budget proposal in December on the 19th and make the additional cuts. So I don't know if Donna would like to talk at all to that.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, and you're looking at the thing in your packet, the blue shaded items are what takes it back to the superintendent's recommended budget. And the green shaded items are the additional $50,000 that we needed to come up with.
And we did share this with the finance subcommittee last week.
And I think it even,
And it's been out with the
briefly
whole-
up in the superintendent's budget last month.
And I have shared it with the board on my weekly update, that kind of like cut and pasted it.
Okay. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion in a second, and then we'll have discussion on the recommendation of the superintendent. Stephen, do you want to make a motion?
I move that we reduce the operating budget category.
And do I have a second? Oh, all kinds of people. Maria? Motion made by Stephen Lawrence, seconded by Maria Madonick. Discussion. Any discussion on the recommendation of the superintendent and director of business?
I just have one quick question about, the other topic we talked about at the finance committee. Was the composting, did that roll into, were we able to roll that into the budget and not have to put it here?
Yes, Jay reached out to the state and it is an allowable use of the cafeteria funds.
Okay,
So we will be able to pay for it then.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Erin?
So I just, it's more a statement.
Yeah.
I do
questions?
think that next year, we really should focus on getting the STEAM teacher back. And that has to be a priority because especially given what's happening with AI and given what's happening with technology in our world, I just think that we need to figure out how to bring that individual back. But the other thing is that I think it'd be helpful as you go through the next year with adding the administrator to figure out, does that actually take care of your curriculum needs? Because I will say I still have some concerns that we might need a dedicated curriculum person. And not in lieu of hiring that second administrator, but in addition to hiring that administrator. I just think it's going to be one of those like Pandora's boxes. Like once you start doing some of this stuff and doing it to the fullest extent, there might be more and more things you uncover that you want and can do. And I just want to make sure that as we move forward, we are actually having enough capacity for curriculum development and curriculum improvement. So I just put that out there in the world now so that when we come to the budget process next year, that has been put into the ethos.
I have a question or comment? Question or comment?
Well, this is exactly my comment. So the comment was, first I hear a commitment. So I hear a commitment from the superintendent. My only worry is I think we can bridge it. So we could use a substitute this year to bridge till next year when we have the extra section. And the one thing I was thinking about is this year our budget is over. And we have an overage. And in that budget, I see an unfunded item, the roof item. So for example, we've got, I believe it's 50,000 on the roof, architect, etc. Any unfunded items weren't accounted for in last year's budget. They should go to the excess cost grant because they are unfunded. The one proposal I was going to make tonight is that any items that come unfunded, I know we've got some curriculum issues that are coming next year. So what the excess cost grant could be used, where we go to the town and ask for those funds back because it wasn't accounted for in our budget. The one thing I would say is to think about that proposal and really, I don't mind putting forward a motion from next meeting that we do that. Because then it formalizes a process of when we ask the town for funds and when we don't. But I was going to ask your sort of take on that. Does that make sense? Because I know we've got the roof and the architect that was never planned for in the budget. I would rather pull that out of the budget. I know we've gone over the current budget already, but we're still not at the year end. take that out and sort of say, let's go to the town. I know the money comes from the same. But that really comes from the excess cost grant, so our overage this year is much higher, I would argue. And so we could fund some of the, I know I was gonna refer to my friend here, some of the work that needs to be done on the playground and on the loop. And those things could be funded with that 50,000 approximately. And so we get those things done. So I was thinking that,
Do you want to talk about that?
I was sort of mixing the
Yeah.
two up,
Do you want
but,
to hold that till we
right,
get
so that-
to
but I wanted to hear
the
it.
next reconciliation that we need to do?
Right, I wanted to hear a commitment, and I think I heard that, and I think we heard that. Aaron's point was exactly what I was on. STEAM, AI, new tech, robotics.
Next year, have a staff member.
See, my worry in that is always that we have a staff member available, but are they the best person to take on that role?
But
So,
We don't somebody who resigned.
okay, so there's no, okay,
Yeah,
so that helps me understand. Beautiful.
Person, staff to be this step, but it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be.
One of the things I hear from kids, I vary a lot around lately. And one thing I hear is robotics, AI, they're talking about ChatGPT. And I say, don't you cover that in tech? And I realize that it's across the spectrum at universities. We're not just doing it in tech, we're doing it right across the spectrum. And one thing I did do is look at some DIRG B and DIRG A schools. They all have one, if not 1.5 students. We did have a half, if I'm right, a few years back, and we cut that back. So I think if we could go to a half this year somehow, and even go back to the town and say, you know, there's pressure to put half a STEAM teacher in. So, you know, can we have some wiggle room here? You're getting the excess cost grant in, so just for this bridging year. Next year, we'll be able to work based on the sections going forward, student numbers going forwards, release a staff member. But I would like to see that sooner rather than later.
I have a question. Would it necessarily have to be another 0.5 person, or could that bridge person be a stipend position of a current teacher? Would that fit the ideal that you're thinking of at the
And I was
moment as
even
well?
thinking substitute. So that could be the other alternative, that we have a substitute until we decide whether we really want that position. Does that make sense? So any options,
Any of those options?
I'll take any option. I think that's for the administration to decide how they want to figure that out.
All right, so we're voting now on the reconciliation of the budget starting July 1st.
Yep.
With, and the motion was to accept the recommendations of the superintendent and the director of business and operation. Any other discussion?
So in order to get a STEAM person, we'd have to give up something.
Yep.
I just want to be clear,
Yes, we have to hit that number.
right?
This is my recommendation, but based on our.
But we could go back to the town and say you have an excess cost grant. Yeah. Could we get some leeway here?
So what we would do is vote on this, move it forward, and then separate from that, go to the town. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what I'm
See, the
voting on.
way I was thinking about this is check and explore the town and see how they feel about that particular option, and then we come back and vote on this adjustment. That's the way I was.
Okay.
Because if we put the ball in the other court, it's gonna be enough.
Okay.
That's my
Make sure
worry.
That's,
Does that make sense? So the precedent seems to be us to them.
We have to reconcile this budget prior to July 1st.
Marcia probably does. I don't know.
Any extra funds that could be put to that, towards that?
I don't think that's falls on that.
And the recurring
Some title money.
curriculum. It's curriculum enhancement and making up for.
I think there's ways that we could look at that.
We have to give up something
I don't think
planned
any
there too.
But
Is there any, so I'm thinking, is there any deferral? Or any we can bring in this that we can then use these funds for next year. Do you see what I'm saying? But you've got an overage this year. Is there something from that overage you could bring something next?
There may be some physical facilities improvements or references. Well, I'm concerned, and I mean, this may be misguided, but is sort of, and if we find funds to bring on a staff position, to guarantee this is a position to the budget, I worry that it may be sort of get someone in, get someone going in that, and then say, sorry, we can't actually. do that."
So this is why we were recommending a substitute, or even Maria had the option of, Maria, what was your option? Maria, make a recommendation.
So just, so online can't hear Stephen.
Top ladder.
Move that thing down.
I just-
Aaron, look at that microphone.
You want to switch with me? I'm loud.
I think just both of us.
There, top ladder.
Yeah, it was either a stipend position or probably using it as a fund. So you could just stipend someone for some extracurricular work regarding that bridge or.
Like,
Yeah.
So I see it from the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Now I forgot what I said, but no,
Concern was about the ability to sustain.
yeah, so two things. So one being that the surplus that we're potentially going to realize for this fiscal year, there are also priorities such as security improvements, some facilities improvements that we may want to also consider using those funds for. And then the other piece is, in a sense, bringing on someone in a STEAM position. Would we be trying to bring someone onto a position that we may not be able to fund next year? In some ways, I would feel more comfortable if this has been something that's built into the budget from the beginning, so that we have confidence that we have a position we can carry forward, because in a sense, we had the position, but then we lost it. Is that true? And the
It was
past,
run away.
yeah,
It's one of these decisions where we had it. So the way I think about this is we've had this position for a couple of years come up. And we had half, and we've had to take it away. And this may be an opportunity to get it back. And what I'm hearing is that we see a commitment going forward.
We value it going forward. I'm gonna stick to the fact that, like, I am more comfortable knowing that there will be a funded position available at the end of the school year, a full-time funded position available. You can't, you can't really bring in a substitute. The Education Association would have an issue with that. It would have to be
So this is great to know.
yeah, no, you wouldn't, yeah, like that's our, right, so there are pieces of that. It would either be a part-time teacher, which we really don't have, but we have had some part-time, like multi-language or special education teachers, or a full-time teacher. And it's difficult to think about bringing in a full-time teacher this year when we're trying to make cuts, knowing that we're gonna have another full-time teacher available next year, but it doesn't mean that we can't look for some very creative stipend opportunities to get people who are interested in STEAM to maybe get involved in some very consistent, rich and robust extended day opportunities and things like that.
Sounds
So
perfect.
it's like that
Yeah.
might be a bridge that
Like
that shows our commitment.
Mad science.
We have great stuff available. And if we said, you know, hey, is there a teacher who's willing to do some after school clubs and maybe get some things going? We have such talented people here.
Perfect. So this seems like a bridge. I just wanted to see
Yeah.
it.
I hear what you're saying. And again, as a two kids, STEAM mom, I
We
get
hear
it.
you. Moms and engineers.
Yeah.
I think it will also speak as well when we go through the next budget cycle to show the town. This is what we've done this past year to bridge it, and look at what the interest there has been in the school.
Yep.
This is now
That
a
we can
demand
meet it.
of our constituents and of the district to have this here, and I think that makes that a more robust argument as well, to have this bridge, so.
Perfect. The thing I think that's important here is that we will have one available person at the end of the year. And so I don't want the town to think that person is gonna disappear off the budget. We're holding back on a position. All right, so we're working with you on this, so we'd like you to work with us. Does that make sense?
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the motion, let me just repeat the motion that we'll be voting on is, that we move to reduce the 2023-2024 operating budget as recommended by the administration. Maria?
Yes.
Sarah Beth?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brooke? Jeff? Stephen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Aaron? And I vote yes, it's unanimous. Thank you, ladies, for your work on that. Okay. Moving on to the Beecher Road School update. Mrs. Sherman?
Hi,
Lisa, do you want to come up to,
I lowered.
join us at the table?
Yes, she does.
Oh, you're on, but I don't know if they'll not hear her speak if she doesn't come to the table.
She's
Oh,
good
yeah?
there? Okay, perfect.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
Mike, can you hear Lisa?
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Lisa. I can hear Lisa. Yes.
Jimmy's got a thumbs up.
Jimmy can hear me.
Jimmy, your volume coming out.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to be with you tonight. So just to clarify, am I talking about the professional development or am I just doing my regular BRS update right now? Okay, just making sure I'm on the right page. So I wanted to, there were so many amazing events at the end of the year that I actually started to make a list and my list was too long. So I'm not going to be able to capture them, but we definitely, as Vonda said, ended the year in a very busy fashion. There was an explosion of fun activities and celebrations of learning. I have to start by talking about some of the grade level celebrations. We had animal museums happening. We had fantasy writing celebrations happening. We had book trailers. Officer Lynch provided a special treat to our sixth graders and had some canine dogs visit us and some boats and lots of fun things for the sixth graders to engage in after celebrating their DARE graduation. So there was a lot of really fun celebrations of the year at the end of the year. We also, prior to all of that, had Arts Week. A huge kudos to our Arts Week committee, who once again put together a week full of amazing learning and experiences. Hopefully you had the opportunity to join us on Arts Night and walk our pollinator pathway and the story walk. So our grounds got beautified, as well as the opportunity for the kiddos to do some gardening and learning about the pollinator pathway. And also on Arts Night, in addition to Arts Night, we also had the opportunity for our fourth graders to perform in their last concert of the year. So thank you to Mr. Caldwell and Miss Lemke and Miss Fonda for leading the students in that. And our concert continued into June. Our fifth and sixth graders had their end of year concert, and we actually had the concert at the high school. It was a really fun experience for the students. It was wonderful to see them up on that stage. Many thanks to the Amity High School staff who supported us going over there. They helped us with instruments, they helped us with lights, they helped us with equipment. They were really wonderful and supportive, and it was a wonderful partnership. And again, our general music and choral director and our instrumental music teachers all sort of led that charge, and the fifth and sixth graders did a really, really great job. The PTO, I can never not give a shout out to the PTO. They celebrated the end of the year with Posse Night. They also helped support the Arts Night work, and they also really supported our field day efforts. So I have to just thank the PTO. A big thank you to Rushi. She is leaving the Beecher Road School community. She will be dearly missed, and we're definitely going to wish her well on her future endeavors, but we are excited for the continued partnership with the PTO leadership that's coming on board. The last thing that I want to mention, and I know that Vonda actually already did mention this, but the curriculum work, I have to really thank all of my staff. They came the day after school ended and they were in the work. The best part was there were times when we would step out for a little bit and we would come back in, and the buzz and hum of activity, all the teachers were just really deeply engaged in the work, and it was amazing. They got a lot more done than I expected them to. Walter Wakeman and Mike Rafferty, who were joining us, were just blown away by the staff and the conversations, the questions, the work that they were doing. And they were just really energized by our staff. And I think our staff felt the same way. So I have to just give a big shout out to all the staff who gave up 4 days of their summer to do that work with us and, really lead the charge in this literacy curriculum work that we are doing to move our district forward and support our students' learning. I think that's it for me. Any questions? I'm looking at my.
Amazing, Lisa. I don't know how you and Jimmy keep up, except that Jimmy wears his sneakers. I'd also like to comment on the wonderful job that both you, Lisa, and Jimmy did, and the rest of the administrative staff on the 6th grade moving up day to the middle school. It was a spectacular weather day, and the students were excited, and your excitement for them really just shone through. And so I thank you and the entire administrative staff for their efforts with the 6th grade moving up day. You made it really special for them.
Thanks,
So
Lynn.
thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Can I just say I have to thank that day happens because of literally a team of people, and I just have to give a big credit to Vito and his custodial.
Absolutely.
They set up over 500 chairs for us and broke them down again. The North Office staff, they put the program together. I was just going to say, Mr. Billings, he helped us with the live streaming. I couldn't have done that without him. He was out there like testing wireless things and like walking around and making marks for where I stood, which I kept missing. So honestly, he kept being like, "You're not on the mark." And I was like, "I'm really sorry. I keep going to hug the kids." So it was really a tremendous team effort to make that day happen. And I agree, it was really super special. And my daughter also graduated. I made it through without tears, which I think the entire staff was taking bets on whether or not I was going to cry. So it was a really beautiful day and a really exciting. I agree with you. Thanks, Lynn.
Any other questions or comments for Lisa? Beach Road School Report? Okay, Lisa, thanks as always. Moving on to Lisa again for the professional development update.
All right, thank you. So this is available to you, I know, online. So I'm not going to talk about every single thing that is listed because you can read it. I just wanted to point out a few quick highlights. So the very first thing I want to mention is that professional development begins at the very beginning of the year. We start with, in August, before the kids even come, we start with new teacher orientation. And that's just for all of we call it new teacher orientation, but it's for all of our new hires, our interns. We invite our substitutes to come in. We invite our new teachers. We invite paraprofessionals. We're all together on those days. And we're really able to sort of start the year off by addressing some of the core philosophies and some of our protocols and procedures here at Beecher Road School with just that small, tight group of people. And then we launch into the year in August again with some full day professional development. This year, we were able to review some key protocols at the beginning of the year, and the feedback from the staff was overwhelmingly positive. We looked together at our drills and how we run them. And we also looked together and talked together about safety and security across the building. We also always have the opportunity for vertical conversations, which the staff always want more of, but we start the year with that. So teachers from sending and receiving grades have the opportunity to talk together about their students. Also, during the year, we had a number of full-day professional development days. One of them that I know you've heard about was Ed Camp. It was staff-led, a wide variety of topics, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, so much so that a lot of people wanted us to do another one right away, which we didn't manage to do. We ran out of days, but we're definitely planning on bringing that again. We focused on DEI throughout the year. Again, I know you heard about this, but we invited Amity High School students to come and talk with us, and that work continues to be something that we revisit and talk about in conversations. And we also had an outside presenter from MLL, from ACES, come to talk to us about our multi-language learners and best instructional practices from them. In addition to the full and the half days that we have throughout the year, we also have faculty meetings. And during those faculty meetings, we really focus on the work of running the school. We talk a lot about, this year we talked a lot about intervention. We did some data analysis throughout the school year. We talk about Smarter Balance. We train our staff on how to administer them. We talk about Smarter Balance results. We do work around strategic planning. Some days we do work that's just driven by the professional learning communities. So that is really, sort of the nitty-gritty in the weeds of the work that we need to do as a school building. And beyond all of that, I want to mention that, something that you may not know about is that every 2 weeks or so, we send out a staff update that Jimmy, Carrie, and I all put together. And in all of those staff updates, we always provide tips, articles, videos to the staff, and it covers a lot of different topics. So sometimes there's an article from Responsive Classroom there, usually tied to something timely. Like at the beginning of the year, it's tied to sort of building a classroom community. We also shared out this year resources from Learning for Justice and GLSEN, because after our DEI work, a lot of the staff were asking for more resources and books and articles. So we were able to share out some resources and articles from those sources. We also share information about important celebrations throughout the year: Diwali, Women's History Month, Native Indigenous Peoples Month. So all during the year, teachers will get resources and articles and information. And then we also share out some curriculum pieces. So this year we shared out some information about writing workshop celebrations, some science of reading stuff was shared out. A couple of times we shared out some TED Talks that were really interesting or engaging. So those also go out as opportunities for our teachers to engage in on their own time, or as a PLC. And so that's just another learning opportunity that's provided to our staff throughout the year. I should have asked any questions.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure you were not turning the page.
Nope.
Questions and comments, Erin?
So it's gonna go along with. Tech is changing so fast, and I don't even know what we teacher and what we help learn, except for the fact that like Meta just said that they're putting some leads on VR for kids as young as 10 that are supposed to be like educational in nature. And I feel like we have a community that has many of the resources to purchase this technology. We don't know what the ramifications, potential ramifications are. And so I'm wondering over the next year, if we need to think about how to resource our administrators, our teachers, our parent. And I say this also with saying that we have resources in this community that I think can support us in doing this. My husband runs the center at Leo around VR and integration of public health and VR. I know that there are other individuals that look at internet safety and work around that. And so I'm wondering how we pull in some of the resources that already exist in our communities to offer professional development to our administrators and teachers, as well as potentially for parents and student populations around. Right? My fear is if we're not proactively looking for ways to do this, what's going to end up happening is that they're going to be on tech and talking about tech and we're making the classrooms, and we're not going to know what they're talking about or how to assess it.
Thanks for saying that. And you're right, it's moving at the speed of light, right? I mean, it's changing all the time. I should mention that our technology department is actually working toward becoming an Apple certified school, which is a huge, there's not very many of them. If you can look it up, there's not very many of them across the United States, but it's a huge process. We had, and I was involved in the meetings, and I apologize for not mentioning it. It's one of those things that We just, yeah, and we just did it, so there was meetings with Apple folks who came in. There has been ongoing, the tech team was making videos of the technology usage in our building. But it's definitely an area, I mean, I know you all know this, but it's definitely an area where we focus a lot on and we have to continue to focus on. So I appreciate you mentioning that one of our goals moving forward is definitely going to have to be to sort of bring in other people to keep up with our own learning.
And parents too,
Parents,
right?
yeah.
Because parents are gonna go and buy things during the holiday season and over summer break and things like that. And I think that if we can even offer the opportunity, how many of you would be interested in coming to it? Do it in partnership with the town.
Thank you, Erin.
Great. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I see a different angle to that. So I see the angle of bringing in town representatives and experts. But I think there's also the education side where we integrate this into our curriculum. And so this goes back to my earlier point. I think to use stipends, to use some support funds for teachers, to actually explore these over summer holidays and winter holidays, to look into these areas might sort of bridge some of the gaps that Erin is talking about. So we're looking at ChatGPT, we've been looking at it for 10 years. Now, front headline, every university is saying what's cheating, what isn't cheating. We're going to encounter the same things that elementary school brings. And so it'd be great to sort of have some policy for parents to understand how this is being used for the good in the school system, and also what's allowed, what isn't allowed. And so I think there's some rules and restrictions. I don't think the big tech companies have been very good at this. But I think it's for educational institutions to set some rules, at least some guidance on this. And I think we need to explore it before we understand what guidance we want to make. And I'd love to hear that you were becoming Apple certified. Some of the better schools are Apple certified. That's what I'm hearing. That's really, really good news. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. I just wanted to, two things. One was to piggyback off of those comments as well and just say that in addition to learning how to use that technology is the safety and security online and using that information, how to gather information appropriately for research projects and et cetera. And that information, to start sharing that the earlier, the better. But again, having a teacher in place that can do that and help coordinate that is vital. The second thing I wanted to say was also thank you for the weekly updates to the staff with some professional development, because I think sometimes life gets crazy, and what a great way to engage with the staff and really bring some updates and bring everyone together as a community reading the same types of articles. So thank you guys. Thank you all for doing that. Appreciate it.
Mike, did you have anything? Okay. Sarah Beth, did you have anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, thank you so much, as always, and for your group that works on professional development. Always an amazing job. Appreciate that. Next is a special education update. Ms. Borcherding.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. How about on the screen, Jimmy? Thank you. All right, now let's see if I can share my video. I hear you.
Can you hear?
I can see your screen. Okay, but how do I make it bigger? Hit slideshow.
I'll give you a very brief overview at the end of the year as well.
Having. Okay, is it working? Great. Okay, so I decided to add in also some tag updates since we had changed the process for tag, just to give you a quick overview of where things landed at the end of the year. So I will add that in as well. So first with special education, our total end of the year numbers for special ed is 134. That does include students who may have been eligible through pre-K, who are not attending, and or who may have become eligible throughout the school year, but do not attend Beecher Road School. So that number is slightly higher than, but we have other students who are in a private school. They would come here, they would still be eligible for special education. Our number of PBTs held since August, 407. It is more than last year. It is less than what we anticipated. So I'm happy to say that it's less than anticipated because quite honestly, I'm not sure how we would have fit any more in at that point. But I will say that I think, like looking at the next slide, maybe if I can go to the next slide. No. There we go. I think a huge part of it has to do with referrals. So our anticipated referrals are slightly lower also than we anticipated. My suspicion, though I can't say for sure, is that the SRBI process is really back in working in full capacity compared to previous years where people had to be pulled to be substitutes. And I think that's made a huge difference because if you look, the number of parent referrals, we've had 59 referrals this year. That does include referrals from the Birth to 3 program to pre-K, and also if any students were from a private school in this area. Parent referrals, 29 this year, 12 at PBT 1. We did not move forward with evaluation because there was no suspicion of a disability. 17 did go to an evaluation, and of those 17, 29% of them were eligible, 59% not eligible, and we have 2 that are still in the process. The school referrals, we had 21 over the course of the year. 1 school referral, we did not go forward with consent. Of the other 20, 80% of those students were eligible. And the majority of those students had gone through some sort of SRBI to be referred, which to me makes me feel good that we're doing the right thing and we're picking the right students up along the way. And I hope that we just continue that we're able to keep continuing that process. I think adding that substitute pool this year was huge in order for us to really keep that process intact. Out of district referrals, we had 9. 1 we did not go to an evaluation on. The other 8 that were evaluated, 50% were eligible, 38% not, and then 1 pending. So that's still hanging out there. And then the new eligibilities this year are 24. So as I said, I do think that it's slightly lower than anticipated because of the SRBI process. A higher percentage of referrals come through that come through the school are eligible, which you would anticipate a bit if we're really making database decision. A lot of times we had gone to PPT with parent referrals where there was a concern and it just required the team to dive a little bit deeper and get some more information before we went ahead with a full evaluation for a student. And then the full number of eligible students and PPTs are for students in and out throughout the year. So there are some students who were exited during the course of the year that are obviously not included in that 134 number. Some came in, some came out. So talented and gifted, after we got our actual testing materials that took much longer than anticipated, the process was actually, from other staff members that I heard from, much quicker and maybe more thorough than in the past in terms of getting the information that we wanted about kids. I have to give the tech and tag teachers a huge thank you for enrolling students and working on spreadsheets. Anthony also helped do that to get all the kids registered since it is an online system for the NNAT2. So 119 students participated in grade 3, and then 24 students opted in for grades 4 and 5. Those were both students new to the district and then also students whose family elected to have them either retest or they didn't test in 3rd grade. Of that group in grade 3, 11% of the 119 students moved to the 2nd round, and all of those students made it through the eligibility based on their score. So there was not, as it sounds like in the past, a lot of discussion on, does this work? What does this look like? teachers' ratings matched with scores of kids, so it really felt like they all went very well together. And then the same with grade 4 and 5. 16% of the students from the first round went, and 75% of them were eligible to participate for the next year. So I know there were some families that said that they wanted to look at doing it next year. If we have enough new students in the fall that it comes up, it is a much quicker process to do a fall administration if we needed to for new students. That would have been much more time consuming with the old system. So, there are a few little tweaks that we want to talk about when we're doing it next year, now that we've run a full cycle through, including starting much sooner, because we had obviously not wanted it to get to the May, June timeline, but with waiting for materials and the enrollment in the program, that's kind of where we ended up. We anticipate hoping to start maybe in January to February before that break, to at least get the first round of testing done before we get into the major testing season. The Renzulli scales were also administered for any students who did the SAGES 3, and they were looked at as part of the consideration, and families were all notified of their students' scores and eligibility. So anyone who took the NNAT2 got a parent printout of the breakdown of scores and where their student landed in the bell curve. Same thing if they took the SAGES. There was that test was, if you were in grade 3, it had to be read to you to take it. If you were in grade 4 and 5, you could take it with, you just took it pencil and paper independently. And we put them into the online scoring system, and it printed out, again, another parent information sheet on where the student fell into that equation. But all students who were in the threshold of eligibility were in the very likely or highly probable range of eligibility after taking the SAGES 2 or SAGES 3. Questions?
Mary, thanks. Aaron, question?
One of the things you had mentioned that we have this for year, so that you both kind of doing your assistant and being new to the district. What could be streamlining a special ed program services? And I'm just wondering, on like that macro level scale, what you discovered, what you found, what has been done around that identification.
So I think that's going to always be a process, right? Every year at how we can do better to serve students. And one thing this year in particular, looking at when we were placing students by grade level, we really looked at how can we place kids who are going to be in good groupings together for their special education instruction, so they aren't all leaving different classes at the same time. It can be more manageable for general ed teachers, for students coming in and out, but also for the special ed teacher to gather their students from one place. And sometimes just even that transition time, trying to reduce the transition times and keep kids in class, figuring out the best way that students are accessing their general ed instruction first without missing that in order to get their special education service whenever possible. And then also this spring, we looked at where the students kind of fell in terms of their needs. And so for one of our groupings of students, we had a kindergarten to grade 3 class last year. Next year, based on the needs of students and some students moving into different areas or needing less support, some needing more support, we're going to run a K1 only class that will be more self-contained, still with their peers in class, but a more behavior type support in the classroom. So continuing to look at that, especially the other area for me is paraprofessionals and independence, because I just feel very strongly that students need to be independent and not have an adult being the one prompting a student through every assignment. So that's one thing I've already talked to the team about next year. I want us to really focus on it. Or what are the areas in the day? What are the courses? Where does the student need the support? And is the support that they're needing around socialization, or is it academics? And what does that look like? So doing a better job of training staff to recognize those needs and not just saying you need somebody all day, because for most students, there are times throughout the day where you don't need someone attached to you all the time. And I think it's important for kids not to have that as well. So.
That's super helpful. The other question, and this is not a question, I'm just curious. So there were 5 kids that were referred from by parents that ended up being eligible. Did we do like a? I mean, use the term post and order, but that's only social work, that's what you're, I'm like, how we could have identified them in school or why we didn't identify them? Or anything?
I don't have the exact numbers and there are somewhere I want to be careful not to identify.
No, I'm just
Right,
using a
so-
percentage.
Right, but I know that there are students who we tested this year who have been tested in the past. And that happened in, I think, both the parent and the school category. Often that can happen when a little guy is tested, you may not get the same thing as once you've hit 3rd grade and really reading looks a lot different. So I know that there are some pieces like that. There are sometimes where parents bring an evaluation to us that they had done. And so it's looking at that evaluation along with information we have. So I can't tell you specifically each one, but yes, we have looked into like kind of where those areas are. I think there's always going to be sometimes where a parent has a concern and you're going to bring it forward. And there are times where we would go to the meeting and say like, yep, we agree. Like this is something we need to look at. We haven't seen it in school, but it's something that maybe is an area we should dig into a little bit. And then there are times where it's something like we haven't seen it in school. There's not an impact to the education. And we've said that we're not going to move forward with an evaluation. So again, it's really kid specific. But yes, we definitely are looking into the whys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, question, Jay?
I just had a quick comment. I just wanted to commend you on just the approach you're using on the tag. I think that's excellent. I think communicating this to parents in an easily readable format would be very good, even on our website, so that parents could refer to that information. Because I know the school district is one where parents choose it for its quality, high quality, and tag is clearly one of those aspects. It's high quality. The other part is you mentioned here very quickly, they were slightly lower than anticipated. And so there's 2 things I can think of here. I think post-COVID, we expected a bigger bump, and I think we saw one, but I believe that started to smooth down, and I think there was a trajectory we were expecting there, and I think it's lower than that. And the second part of it is, again, what I'm hearing is some sort of systematic analysis that you're doing, which seems to sort of, fine eligibility more finely is probably the best way to describe that. Well, I think the questions Erin asked are very, very important, but I really commend you for
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think it's excellent.
Thank you.
No longer. You've been here 1 minute.
That's true. Just about.
Any other questions or comments?
I think I don't get to use that anymore.
July 1st, you're like, here. Right. Carrie, thanks again. Oh, Mike, did you have a question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Sarah Beth?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Okay, great. I didn't want to ignore you out in cyberspace. 3B is Town Building Committee for Beach Road School Capital Projects update. Mr. Hughes.
Perfect. We met on June 12th, the committee, and we unanimously voted for Silver Petroselli Associates to be put forward for the Board of Selectmen. We felt out of the presentations they gave the best. They have the history with the school, they have the history with the town. They were engaged in the walkthrough. They received great presentations, but we felt that they rose to the top. So we voted to put forward to the Board of Selectmen, who on June 14th voted to go into contract with them. Also unanimous. So all steps in the right direction. We now have a contract, the architectural portion of this project. So that's huge. So we're excited to get this going.
Perfect. Do you have anything, RFP update is under that. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
To the, not to the town building project, but we're gonna talk about those funds.
Right.
We're gonna talk about those funds later.
The-
Quickly.
the Tucker?
Yep. Oh, no, Tucker is
The HVAC?
Yeah, that's later on the
Okay.
agenda too. This is just on the RFP.
This on the RP, okay.
Wanted to add.
No, I don't.
Okay, great. Any questions on the town building committee or the RFP process? Perfect, thank you. Jeff, thanks for serving on that committee. And finally, we might see a light at the end of the tunnel on our roof. Yay. Yeah, we don't want to. We don't want to see That's true. Okay, we're moving on to the ad hoc enrollment instructional needs and space planning committee report. I want to thank Maria and Vonda for co-chairing that committee. The work that they've done has been amazing. So I'm going to turn it over to them now. Maria, I think you're going to start.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. So to bring you back to our January meetings and some discussions that we had, collectively, we as the Board of Ed recognized that there were several challenges facing our district and the need to gather information so that we were able to make informed recommendations to continue to provide excellence in education here in the Woodbridge School District. I want to thank the board for those robust conversations. And in fact, in April, the New Haven Register highlighted a story on those recommendations and on our conversations at that January Board of Ed meeting. And they highlighted Jay's suggestion for a formal committee to investigate that. So I want to thank him and for everyone else who commented on that and joined that discussion. I want to thank Lynn for working to get this on our agenda and giving us a name and helping to build a mission for our committee. And a thank you to Vonda, who jumped in enthusiastically headfirst 6 weeks into joining our district in the middle of budget season and enthusiastically brought this work forward. So I want to thank everyone for their participation in getting us going with this committee. We recognize, and the reason why we had those conversations is because we recognize that our current rising enrollment and our enrollment projections and the programming and instructional needs that we saw and our staffing configurations posed challenges to the current size and structure of Beecher Road School. So in recognizing these challenges, the Woodbridge Board of Ed formed this ad hoc committee in January of 2023 to gather information regarding the implications of increasing enrollment and student needs on our physical space here at Beecher Road School. Our official charge as a committee was to review and address the physical, administrative, and instructional implications of increasing enrollment and student needs on the current physical space of Beecher Road School. It was incredibly important to us that we engaged stakeholders in the community very early on in this process, both for their expertise and their history of the district and also for their contributions to our committee that we use to stretch our thinking about some of the issues on hand and for their contributions toward creative problem solving. So we had members of our Beecher Road School administration, we had members of our teachers, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Director of Facilities, and we had a community member who joined us in our committee. The committee met 5 times between March and June of 2023, and we identified several working groups. We identified that we needed to look at our current space needs, our current and projected enrollment, the impact of state legislation on preschool enrollment, shared services with our BOA districts, engagement with town leadership to explore existing spaces suitable for school expansion. We wanted to explore the repurposing of existing spaces within Beecher Road School, the considerations of expanding our physical space, and our goals and vision for adding both value to our district and our community. So in order to do that, we looked at several different presentations, and I'm going to summarize them, a couple of them for you. The OFAC one. These slides may be familiar. They're part of Lisa Sherman's presentation on our current space needs that she gave to our ad hoc committee, and we had her give at our April Board of Education meeting. these space issues and the pictures that we chose highlight that there are some larger spaces in our school that have been repurposed and are being shared simultaneously by multiple teachers and multiple learner groups. We have a lack of classroom space for our specials. We have a storage problem for our archived files, and we also have a storage concern with our special education equipment, maintenance equipment, gym equipment, et cetera. And the storage issue with that equipment is that cannot leave the premises. Even if we find a place for our files, that equipment is used on a daily basis, and we need somewhere safe that the equipment can be maintained and that we can leave our hallways free and our educational spaces for our students and our educators. Thank you. Vonda, along with our administration, put together another document regarding our current space concerns. And this document highlighted the spaces that we have and the potential spaces that we need. And it's small writing up there, but in summary, if we had the ideal number of classroom spaces for our general education and special education students, we would need about 12 to 15 more classroom spaces this August when school opens, is the takeaway from the information that's up there. In addition to the storage issues, in addition to large group gathering issues for our school community, we have an immediate need for more classroom spaces. Thank you, Anthony. The next slide was put together and shows our enrollment data, our total enrollment, our special education enrollment, and then a screenshot of our May monthly enrollment report that we get. So I wanted the green graph on the left tells a story about our increasing enrollment, which we know both from the reports that we get every month and we know from our enrollment projections that we got last June, but the numbers don't tell the entire story. Because if you look at the total enrollment numbers and even the special education numbers and do a little math, you might say, okay, well, between year A and year B, you're only increasing 15, 20 students. That might be one classroom worth of students, but it is not. Because some of those students, especially on the special education side, need some specialized classrooms in which to learn. So the number of students, the number increase does not necessarily tell us the entire story. We do know that we had 22 students enroll after our enrollment was sent to the state on October 1st. And the highlighted classrooms on our BRS enrollment sheet from May 1st, the classrooms from grade 1 and grade 2 and one from grade 3 that are highlighted, those are the classrooms that are already above Board of Education classroom size guidelines. And I think we had kind of seen that trend even over the past year, which is why we advocated so strongly for paraprofessionals to help support our teachers in those classrooms as well. Thank you. In June of last year, Dr. Prouda did a formal enrollment projection for us. And that enrollment projection predicts that by the year 2031 to 2032, we will have 991 students at Beecher Road School, which is 125 more students than we have right now. Prouda's report was very comprehensive, but I also wanted to point out that in our research of the population projections around the state of Connecticut and around the country and how Beecher Road School was falling, Madison, Connecticut had just done their enrollment study, and it was by a different group, Malone and McBroom. And Malone and McBroom cited Woodbridge as the only peer district, and that's a DERG B district, that saw kindergarten enrollment increase this year. So we actually have another formal study that actually specifically cites our district, that the general population studies, both in Connecticut and the United States, that show that the birth years that are entering grade school are decreasing. Our enrollment continues to increase. And those are two different independent studies that showed that as well.
Exciting.
We're gonna love them.
Yeah. So 125 more students by 2031, that is not that far away. 24 more students by the start of 2025, and that is not including
That is not far away either. That's 2 years away, and that is not including a preschool bubble that's going to happen because a new legislation just passed in the state that changed the eligibility for kindergarten. So we may have students that enroll in preschool that are eligible 1 year and then not eligible to enroll in kindergarten the following year. And so we may have a year where we have a bubble preschool classroom of 4-year-olds that we are going to have to, we want them, we love them. But we are going to need teachers and we are going to need space to provide for them. These enrollment projections do not take into account any new construction that is either currently occurring in the town of Woodbridge or could be proposed to occur in the town of Woodbridge. All of that is in addition to what these enrollment projections show. So knowing all of that, the ad hoc committee gathered and discussed some information, and our goal in discussing the information in ad hoc was to look at what have towns around the state done when they have been faced with similar problems. And we wanted to think creatively about what are all the possibilities that we could do here in Woodbridge. So we looked at those enrollment projections and our current enrollment projections. We reviewed our classroom size guidelines. We reviewed the capital projects that are already underway, the roof repair, the solar initiative, et cetera. We looked at, to help with our mission and vision, the BOA portrait of a graduate. We looked at this Beach Road School space usage report, which was that blue and white graph that bonded administration had put together. We also, of course, had Principal Sherman's presentation with her pictures of these shared classroom spaces and the specialist teachers that we currently have teaching from carts. We also reviewed Region 20 is a brand new region that will start the school year 24-25. Region 20 is the combination of Region 6 and Litchfield County. They saw a decrease in enrollment, and so they got together over a 3 to 5 year process. They formed a temporary regional school study committee, and that committee, we read their report, we listened to a presentation on their report. What they formed and what this regional school study committee did was they actually in committee formed their mock Region 20. They did 5-year enrollment projections. They did 5-year curriculum projections because different schools had different curriculums and they wanted to make sure they could combine them to make sure that they were offering the best of all of their curriculum offerings. And they also put together a 5-year financial plan for the new Region 20 district. That was presented out to all of the towns that were impacted that had to go to referendum and vote in all of the towns that were going to combine together. And again, this was about a 3 to 5 year process. And then once the process was approved, it was another couple of years before they formally moved the high school over. They're working on new mascots, they're engaging the community, and the work of actually merging the teacher contracts, the administration contracts, and all of that work. So we looked at that process. We heard from Dr. Michael Dieter, who I went to his equity, safety, and health presentation at last year's CABE conference. He talked in that presentation about what Bristol, Connecticut has done. And what Bristol, Connecticut did was they used existing buildings in town and renovated them for a brand new magnet middle school. And that freed up space in other parts of town for preschool and kindergarten. His presentation at CABE was interesting because he attached to his presentation, in order to sell their vision to the town, they had a lot of data, a lot of educational data about how the surrounding environment of the school impacts education. There was a lot in his presentation about bringing the school up to code with regards to ADA accessibility, and also with regards to the different classrooms, the different specialized classrooms, and some fluid space, and then also large gathering space for the school community to get together. We also heard a presentation from Michael Isles, who we were so lucky to have our community representative, Patty McKeon. And Michael is someone that she works with in her architectural firm at Guilford. And he came and he reviewed the process of going to referendum in his town, how they studied what Guilford High School needed a few years ago, and how they went through the process of forming a committee, getting an education specification study, presenting that data to the town, having an architect come and present several different options to the town Some of those options were to renovate the current building and to renovate existing buildings in the town. Some of those options were to do a partial building of new and renovation. There were several iterations of that all the way up to a completely new space. What was the great takeaway from his presentation was the engagement that he had with the town. He coincidentally also sits as chair of the Board of Finance in Guilford as well. He wasn't the chair at the time that this project went through, but he was familiar with how to engage with the town. And so they did that very early on in the process. And he also talked about the data that they gathered in order to get to the point where they could present these options to the town. And lastly, we had a little bit of a workshop part of our meeting, and we talked about, especially talked to our administrators and our educators for the goals and vision for the education system moving forward, and how we could take any plan that we developed for the elementary school and really think outside the box and think about how we could enrich the entire Woodbridge community by making sure that we have spaces in our elementary school and by enriching this building as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the education specification study, and a lot of these words are coming from the National Council on School Facilities. And I want to talk about a little bit about what this is, and Michael Isles touched on this during his presentation to us. An education specification survey is really the link between educational programs and school facilities. This particular study takes a look at what are the education spaces needed for both general education and special education in today's educational environment. What kind of spaces do we need? What equipment do we need in those spaces? And how can we best provide that for our students? The development of an education specification study is a pre-designed process. So this is the study that will formalize what Bond Ed administration had put together when they did their space usage presentation. And they said, okay, we have X number of teachers on carts, we need classrooms for those. We have 5 or 6 special ed or whatever the number was in that presentation, sharing spaces. This is how many spaces we would need, and this is what the setup of those spaces would be. These are the resources we would need for those physical spaces in the building. This education specification study is something that we would then take to an architectural firm and say, how do we get what we need, given that this is what has been determined is what Beecher Road School needs for elementary education in today's day and age. That specification study in our town might also look like a building life cycle study of this building and any existing buildings in town that the town would be willing to give to us as educational space, whether that be temporary or whether that be part of the permanent solution of increasing space in our elementary school. So this company would, if this were a recommendation, that specification study would be done on all of those existing buildings so that we could figure out how to create those education spaces in those different buildings. So this education specification study would be the guide to how we would create the district in the future and how we would go about finding the resources and finding the best option for the town moving forward. The little blurb on the left is actually a table of contents from a education specification study that was done in Maryland. And it just gives you an idea from the table of contents, the type of information that you would get from this education specification study. It includes both the goals and vision for the elementary school, general planning considerations, what spaces are available, what open spaces are available in town. It takes into account technology, takes into account the safety and security needs of the school, sustainability criteria, a calculation of capacity, both for our immediate needs, our future needs, and even for enrollment projections beyond 2031. Space requirements and square footage tables, academic space, administrative space, maintenance and custodial space, what we need to actually maintain the spaces that we could create or could renovate, media spaces, and then it went on, performing arts, et cetera, whatever the needs of that district were. And so I hope that that's a little bit of a background about what this education specification study could provide for our district. And so I want to conclude our summary of the ad hoc committee with the recommendations that the group is bringing forward to the Board of Education tonight. Our first recommendation is that we would like to direct the district to have formal discussions with our fellow BOA districts to explore shared services, including grade level organization. Our second recommendation is that we recommend that the Woodbridge Board of Education hire a consultant for a feasibility study, specifically an education specification study to explore repurposing current spaces within Beecher Road School, evaluation of other spaces in town that could be repurposed for educational instruction, and a comprehensive evaluation of space utilization and instructional needs and our options for addressing those needs going forward.
So I'll say, wow. Excellent comprehensive overview from the committee, and many thanks to Maria for making it so beautiful and putting it together so that we can present this not only to the Board of Education tonight, but to the town in the future. I believe we're going to be on the July Board of Selectmen agenda to present the presentation so that we are transparent about the work that we've been doing. So
Say we are behind.
And a heads up.
15 class.
Yeah.
Places we should have done.
So I'm gonna ask that we have a motion to accept those recommendations, a second, and then we'll have some discussion, if that's okay with it.
Sure. So I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendations of the Ad Hoc Enrollment Instructional Needs at Space Planning Committee as presented.
Do I have a second? Jeff? Motion made by Maria Madonick, seconded by Jeff Hughes. Discussion. Do you have anything you want to say other than?
I just want to make sure that it is mentioned that there are 15 classrooms.
Great.
And if we have spaces, and if we have 5 more kindergartners enroll.
Somebody else will need another space. Right.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? We couldn't hear that. Fine.
Yeah, so we're watching the kindergarten numbers very closely. I believe it was 113 that we have. That tipping point is probably a handful. And we did a strong recruitment effort in the spring, so maybe we won't get many more, but if we do, we would need to, keep the children within our recommended guidelines and add another section. So we would not need to hire another teacher. We would pull from a teacher within our current staff and kind of reallocate that position, but it would need a classroom. So that would mean that we would be knocking on somebody's door that's not a classroom teacher to maybe take their show on the road for the year on a cart. Another teacher, we have several. It's not unheard of, but it's not optimal, and it's less common at an elementary level than it is at a secondary level.
Erin, do you have any comments or questions?
I think it was it seems really comprehensive, everything you did. Kudos to y'all for doing it and putting in the time and work. I mean, I think what we're looking at is building for the future of the next generation of kids. And again, I just want to emphasize to the town that if you have a school district that is a high performing school district, both in terms of the teachers and what they're doing, but also in terms of the physical space, which does impact the school, then property values go up. And so I think that, when we think about investing in our schools, we should also make that connection that, a high portion of our property values in this town are directly correlated to our school and specifically to this elementary school.
Thank you. Stephen?
No comments, great work.
Jay?
I think Aaron's got my notes for today. It's just the connection between property values. That was my first point. The other part is these are town buildings. And so I know we have multi-purpose use here, so we have rec here, etc. And so one thing I would suggest we might want to do is to reach out to recs and sort of give them the sort of advance warning on how this is going to play out. And so they're also in this equation too, because I know, given these are town assets, rec and multi-purpose use is something I would look at more.
They'll come use the facility in the summer.
The pool is gonna be up and
Yeah.
up and
Pool will be up and running and they do use spaces after school.
You know,
I'm
that,
trying to work with them, but.
that,
And there's
Different
storage
standards.
that they use
their
here.
Standards are.
Right.
right, so this is
Different.
something, and I think Vonda's just raised the issue, that we do have certain requirements, being an elementary school, that when people from the outside come in, we need certain security standards. And so I think that's another part of the equation. This is where I was really going with this. But I think rec would be great for them to have their own space where they can offer all their services without any restrictions of moving staff here and there. And I think they would really want that.
you know, and that also came up, Jay, it's a great point, and it also came up when we were doing some of our vision work about how reconfiguring and creating space for our students here could also help enrich town programs. And that was one of the thoughts, maybe enriching the program here leaves rec with its own space somewhere else where those programs could be built on and enriched as well.
Last but not least, I think about repurposing space. If you'll help me on this, or a new building or new buildings, or it doesn't take a couple of years. We're looking at a decade. And so at the minimum, if I'm right, it could be 20 years. So I think to start now rather than to keep deferring this. So you did an excellent job, Maria and team.
So
Thank you so much.
You're
to
welcome.
start that.
Thank you. So some of the projections that we heard, Guilford's process went through very quickly because they had people that were very well versed in this process. And they were also trying to meet a state deadline for when reimbursements changed. So their process went relatively quickly. This is about a 3 to 5 year process, which is going to put us from thinking about it, designed to actually improving whichever space or whatever spaces we're going to improve for education. That 5 year process will take us to 2029, and in 2031 is when we're not expecting that balloon all at once, but we'll have 100 more students by the time that project gets finished. So I think it's also important, part of our recommendations in looking at other spaces in town, there's a possibility we may need interim spaces in which to put students while a project is being completed. So we've also, the point that we also would like to make when we present these findings to the town is that 3 to 5 years is our timeline. We realize that there are other projects that may have taken longer, but we need seats for the students that move into this district. And that is imperative, and that is happening faster than previous timelines. And so that's why we advocated to get on, and were graciously accepted to be on the Board of Selectmen agenda for July, so we can start getting that information out there.
We invite you all to come to that meeting.
July 12th.
5 o'clock. And so Vonda will give her monthly report, and then I think we're gonna be on next.
It's important enough that I'm gonna come back from my vacation for the day.
Yes, she is.
It's important.
So she gets the gold star for that.
No, it's just.
Yeah. Jeff, do you have any, questions or comments?
No, just that his comprehensive work was finished ahead of schedule. Chairs, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great work. And the other thing is, you know, the charge of the committee, being that Vonda was new, when we established the charge and the timeline, we wanted to give a little extra time if we needed the summer, if she needed some additional time and whatever. She just like jumped in amazingly and did, and worked collaboratively with us on this process so that we didn't have to wait till September to get this report. We can, you know, go on the road right now. And that's our intention. So
It's great stuff.
yeah. Mike, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just that you did a great job on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Sarah Beth? I'm gonna think she's saying, yeah, I'm gonna think she's saying no, and if she does, hopefully send me a text. Okay, so any other discussion? All right, we're gonna take a vote and I'm gonna call the roll to do that. So the motion was to accept the recommendations of the committee as presented. Maria?
Yes.
Sarah Beth? I don't know if you could just raise your hand, Sarah Beth, maybe, or send a text.
Hi, sorry, I'm good, yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Thank you. Jay? Brooke? Jeff?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Aaron? Yes. And I vote yes, it's unanimous, Martha. Thank you very much. And we should all give a round of applause for the nation. Thanks to all.
Yes, thank you to all, and a special thank you to our administrators and teachers, especially at this incredibly busy time of year. Who
served on it.
stayed, for hours after school in this incredibly busy time of year to get this work done. It is hugely appreciated. Thank you.
And I think they're willing to help take it on the road.
Yeah. We'll send you out a reminder about, once July 12th. It looks like it's confirmed, but once we see it on the agenda, we'll send out a reminder to everyone.
And they invited the Board of Finance there as well, so we didn't present it to both groups, but the Board of Finance is going to be at that meeting.
Okay, Finance Committee report. Stephen?
I think it went.
Oh, sorry, Policy Committee report. Maria?
Yes. The policy committee met earlier this evening, and again, we're reviewing the 9,000 series. And those are our policies that govern how the board works. So we're looking at updating our standing committees. We want to make sure that they're operating consistently across standing committees. There was some language that was a little bit old, but there are a couple of things that we are checking with Kate about regarding, allowing speaking at certain times, et cetera. And so once we have the confirmation that what we want in those policies is correct, then we will go ahead and bring those to you for 30-day review. Two other things that we discussed, and the first is our standing committees have always had representation from the WEA, from our teachers, and we have always had parent representatives. This past year, that kind of fell off. People, have been busy, et cetera, but the National Association of Boards of Education, along with CABE, they're very strong proponents of community engagement, parent and guardian engagement in the school district. And so what we are thinking about in policy committee is how to make that engagement happen. The WEA has a strong process for who they put forward to work with us on the standing committees. The PTO does not in their current bylaws. So we're having some conversations about how we can engage those parent representatives. So if you had any thoughts or any ideas, bring them forward. We may have a short policy meeting in July to talk about that briefly so that we can bring those policies to you for 30-day review in July. So please send input. And then the final thing we spoke about, we are reviewing our 9,000 series, but it's been about 11 or 12 years since we've done a comprehensive policy review. And so we'd like for you to consider engaging CABE. A recommendation from the policy committee is to engage CABE in a policy review. And that will come up under our next discussion. Our next discussion with regards to district surplus. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Any questions on Maria's report? Good. Sarah Beth, did you have a question? No.
I think she's talking to me and I can't hear her.
Oh, okay. We'll work on louder voices, Sarah Beth.
All right. Finance report. To kick off the fiscal year is 92% complete. And our total projected savings combined for all categories is currently estimated at 120,000, almost unchanged from approximately 125,000 in May, and this does not include the excess cost grant. On the lower expense side of the ledger, we have salary savings of approximately 347,000 due to staff turnover and vacancies. Benefit savings of approximately 14,000 now due to fine tuning of FICA, CMERS, and medical insurance estimates. Miscellaneous expenses savings of approximately 14,000 due to the Ezra nurse coming in less than budgeted. Very familiar from prior months, but that's all good, nice and consistent. On the higher expense side of the ledger, purchase professional services are forecast to be about $54,000 over budget, mostly due to substitutes. This includes, in addition to the substitutes, on the unbudgeted superintendent search, a single audit for the prior fiscal year, and unanticipated temporary staffing due to a medical leave, and the unbudgeted purchase of 2 additional software modules for our Munis ERP. But it's still lower than in April by about 98, which was, we were then estimating, and by we, I mean Donna, was estimating at 98,000 over, and this is due to a 40,000 anticipated savings in legal fees as we're near the end of almost at the end of the fiscal year, and we haven't incurred this expense, so we can feel fairly confident that we will not incur that expense in the next week and a half. For purchased property services, this is forecasted to end up about 7,000 over budget. In the plus column, this reflects lower natural gas and electricity costs with a savings of approximately $90,000. We can only all hope this shows up in our personal utility bills the same way. This will allow the Board of Education to contribute $95,000 toward architect costs for roof replacement. In addition, we encumbered $13,000 last year for this purpose, which combined would cover the total cost, which is just over $104,000. In addition, I'll just note, as we covered in the last month, we had surplus. We had already encumbered funds to cover the unbudgeted roughly 40,000 HVACs audit required by the state. So that's already accounted for, and that just 7,000 over budget. Other purchase services are currently running $175,000 over budget due to an additional outplaced tuition and special education transportation costs. This is lower than last month because we don't anticipate additional outplaced transportation costs before the end of the month. And this will be reduced to approximately 15,000, taking into account the excess cost grant. Materials and supplies are running about 9,000 over. This is higher than in April, but this is due to the purchase of some unbudgeted security supplies, an important expense. And the reason, it's also, this is up about $7,000. The reason is an IT order came through for Crash Plan, which for those of you who have never heard of Crash Plan, this is a data backup solution. So that's where we're at with those. And thank you as always for Donna's tremendous work, who makes this all very easy and clear.
Thank you, Stephen. Any questions or comments for Stephen?
I've just got 2 very quick questions. First one is how much, so on first line on series 100, you're saying the combination of sort of new staff were paid at a lower rate than predecessors, etc., for 347,000. How much of that is from unfilled positions, and how much of that is actually a saving? See what I'm asking? Because I think the majority of that is from unfilled position. So let's be very careful when we specify that.
I think it's about $100,000 is the turnover staff.
The savings is
And the
1/3.
remainder is the unfilled.
I say this because forward when somebody sees a $340,000 saving, they think, oh, going forward, we're going to keep that going. That's not the case. It's the unfilled positions that account for more than 2/3 of that.
Yeah.
Next point made is something I made earlier, and Stephen alluded to this. He said $104,000 over last year and this year were going to architectural services and, am I correct, roof replacement services? So this goes back to my unfunded mandate question. I would like to take that out of this year's budget, go straight to the excess cost grant to the 90,000. And then that budget would go up. Stephen, you'll be happy, it'll go up by about 90,000 to 200. I noticed that on the potential uses that you've got there, you've got that 95,000 in there. That would disappear to zero. Hence, you'd have the 95,000 for some of the security aspects and some of the playground repairs in the north playground loop. And I think I asked this question before. I believe the town had some ESSER funds earmarked for the loop. Did anybody ever check that?
For playgrounds.
The playgrounds, because I think it's the loop that's a public resource.
I remember Beth at least liked that idea, whether.
Right.
No,
Or June.
I saw it on some, I think it was a newspaper, I saw it somewhere.
We were gonna investigate that at our June meeting and it was canceled, just
Okay.
because I think we had
So
the.
an email to, I think, Beth and their team would really help, because then you wouldn't need those.
And you have another use for them, or you would return more to the town?
So here you propose that we do some
We said we didn't.
late playground repairs.
So wait, I think we should wait on that until we get to that part of the agenda, but this is just the finance committee report.
That's my comment.
Okay,
95,000.
anything else? Can I just clarify? Jay, I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. When you're saying should move that to the excess cost grant, you mean to move that to the 167.5 that they have yet to give us?
No, so
Yeah, hold on to that question.
That's a separate.
Hold on to that. Thank you.
issue.
Okay, so we're moving on from the
Oh.
finance committee report.
Just 2 follow-ups quickly. So Donna, one question, I don't know how hard this would be to access, but I'd be curious to your point about the staff salary savings, because that's typical for any organization because you're budgeting for 100% of positions and they're never filled throughout the year. So there's always going to be a differential. But just to understand, has this been an abnormally large differential this year? Yeah, and so understanding too, kind of what's the more,
Too, it's
it's
just.
yeah, and sort of what has been more typical historically, maybe just looking back 2-3 years. I think it'd be interesting to your point because there's.
It's the paras. Paras you haven't been able to hire, that's been an earmark, we kept them at that level. I believe we've taken one out.
But pre-COVID, I could look back and see what.
We were hitting the
vacancies were.
target pre-COVID,
Mhm.
from what I remember. I think it's post-COVID, the hiring. I think that's the reason. Where
Yeah,
they've
and
got
that may well
large
change. But there is always a certain amount of turnover during the year where you're going to have some salary savings because of that. So I'm just sort of curious, is it like 50, has it been more like 50,000 or 75,000 versus 347,000? Just in terms of understanding that. Yeah, and then the other piece in terms of, we'll have the conversation about the allocation. I think one question that will be helpful to address in that part of the conversation is why the school would choose to direct funds to paying the architectural fee for the roof replacement and for the other, in a sense, why are we saying it's coming out of our budget versus say coming out of the town's budget? Because in a sense, what you're suggesting is the town would cover that and then the school would use those resources for other purposes.
There's a slight switch to that. So the way I see this is a capital town asset. But given it's a town asset.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
why is it operating? Town budget, but just to sort of put us all at ease, there's an excess cost grant that comes into the town that could be used potentially with these sports factors. Where it's an unfunded mandate. That's the next.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that next. Which is reconciliation of the 2022-2023 budget surplus. So
Donna and Vonda, do
Yeah.
you want to give us a
Yeah.
little overview?
So actually, we created a list. We've been listening, talked to our administrators, we've been listening to the board, we've been kind of looking at some needs and came up with a list. One of the things that we did not put on this list that we should have is the funding for the architectural
For the education specification.
education specs. That's about $15,000 to $20,000, which needs to go on here. And if we can get that on here as a higher priority, that would be very helpful, I think, moving forward. So we went over, very, very briefly, I'm gonna rattle off the things that we put on here and recommend, and then I'll explain why we recommended it the way we did. It is completely up to board decision. So the ed specs is one of our top priorities. One of the pieces that Jay was just mentioning was the architectural engineering services for the roof replacement at, roughly 90-something thousand dollars. We'll talk about why we included that as well. Just Friday, we had a wonderful breakfast from the Board of Education. Thank you very much, appreciating our staff and our leadership team. And during that, there was a gentleman walking around with a wheel, and I asked him what he was doing, and quickly, he's measuring for wiring to improve our PA system because it's very old and not effective and not safe, right? So Principal Shervin is very happy. So we do have a quote for that yet. We put in a holder. A brand new PA system would be much more than that. We're thinking 6 digits, but this could be a little higher or it could be a little lower, but it does need to go to the company as a holder. We do need to start to replace our smart boards. So we looked at some of that extra money and said we could replace, I think it's 12. So this is kind of in our order of priority minus the ed specs, which really needs to go up at the top. So we also are looking at a dismissal platform pickup app, and that would need some wireless access points outside. So those are safety pieces that we could look at through safety and security. They also can be used for reunification if we ever had to leave the site and go to our offsite reunification spot. Those would be very helpful features of safety there.
And wireless capabilities outside can have a classroom benefit too.
Absolutely.
On a nice day.
Yep. We are looking, we've heard loud and clear from the town that they're interested in us using our extra funds if we have them for starting to chip away at our security. And I met with Vito and Omni representative yesterday, Adam, and we looked at, some of our fishbowl cameras, additional card swipe outside the rear of the building, a couple of additional card swipes, and they're putting in quotes for that actually today. But we have some cameras that only like single view, but they're now much more modern, double and triple view that would be very helpful. The CAPE policy audit that we talked about, and we did put some things in here just to keep them on your radar, just like Erin planted seeds earlier. We're planting seeds that the kindergarten playground, if you look at it, is really not in good shape. We have other playground areas and loops that need replacement, but I think it bears a little bit more of discussion with our town. We have a strong partnership with the town, and the bottom line is we're all serving the same people, and it's really all one big bucket of money. So our rationale was that we had these extra funds, and I'll let Donna explain why 2 of these bigger numbers are shaded in gray. We're thinking we have these extra funds. We can do a lot of this work without touching that excess cost money. So we have some recommendations for you to discuss.
Yeah, I just sort of prioritize those items because, well, I want a roof. And I'm just very motivated to get that done. I feel like we've asked for it before in the capital plan. It hasn't happened. We have this, opportunity with this large amount of salary savings to, commit to doing those first few phases before the bonding kicks in.
Then it goes to
And so that was just my thought. And of course, it's not my decision. And then the smart boards, Anthony had done a great bit of research and he brought some in and the teachers tested them and, people just seemed really excited about it. And so I kind of, he had some money left in his hardware line. And so I just stuck some more money there. But again, that was just, my maybe getting ahead of the game here, but prioritizing that. But if we took those things out of the detailed report you saw, our surplus would be $200,000. So, and you guys can prioritize it the way you want, but if we take the architect fees out and Jay, I hear you saying maybe we can use the excess costs for that. Maybe we could, I like a principle of matching your revenues and expenses and excess costs, those are special education type revenues.
They don't come to us, they go to the town.
Correct.
But we don't ask for them back.
Which we
So,
need.
so the way I'm thinking about this that we've done in the past is that there's that 95,000, which I see as a capital investment.
I agree.
Technically, you agree on that point, so that's an easy argument. I do not want to set a precedent going forward for this board where the town thinks we can fund capital investment through the operating budget. I think that's the wrong thing. That's the first thing I would say. And the second thing is it is capital. And so given its capital investment, the town will receive this check on the excess cost grant. And this is an unfunded mandate, I would argue, in a way, because we need the roof, as you quite said. Town agrees we need the roof, and so this money needs to be made available. And so, yes, it's the same pot. What I'm going to argue is that these are operating expenses. And so to do things like the playground, do things like, you stand on it, you said we need to get the town to consider some of these, and hopefully we can work something out. I think those are things that affect the operations of the school. The roof is a capital asset and capital project, and I think that the town could easily, we could request those funds from the town in the excess cost. That would be a reasonable request, given that we're not asking the town directly. These are funds coming into the town that are to supposedly cover the excess cost that we have budgeted for. This is an unfunded mandate. So I think it's reasonable to request from the town for these funds. And we've done this in the past, so this is not setting a new precedent.
Do you want to other comment on this?
So we anticipate that we will need some of that excess cost money next year.
Right?
Pardon me?
Do we know what for?
And that's not
For special
budgeted for
education,
next year's budget. That's not budgeted for next year. So I believe when there's special education needs that come on, hasn't the town always?
They have wondered that. They have.
On that, I would continue that. That's just me. I would continue that.
But the reason they can be wonderful is because they get these funds.
Right, so like, I just, I have, like, our thinking is that to pull that, we have extra money here, to pull that money also. Again, it's your discussion, but we have quite a bit of money here that's extra this year for whatever reason. We can do these things without touching that money. That money really is excess cost money. So for us, in the school district, it felt right to leave it there. So I'm just trying to explain to you our thinking.
Let me ask you a simple question, sorry. How often is the excess? I think it's twice a year. It comes in twice a year.
Yeah.
So we're getting funds for this year, for the one check has already arrived. Am I correct?
They're both here by now.
They're both here by now. So those funds are with the town. Correct? So if I was to request those 95, Stephen was to request those $95,000, then they would come from the funds that are already there. Now we're talking about the next fiscal year and the budget year. Wouldn't we have another amount, albeit less? I know it's always been increasing, albeit less, but wouldn't we have that amount available next year that we could draw on? I'm just matching calendar years with fiscal years and just trying to explain how,
The unfunded thing that we know is coming in our budget next year that relates to special education, in my estimation, is less than the excess cost that the town will receive next year materially. But I guess the new expense will make next year's revenue go up some, from what the budget was.
it cushions you next year is my argument. So as you're going forward, you've got that little cushion to work with. That's the way I'm thinking about this, but I really do appreciate all the work you've done, the thought that goes
Yeah,
into this.
Again, we
There's
know
no
it's
correct answer
discussion.
here.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and we're giving you our best thinking, but
Two questions.
You
One,
have to use like a better outdoor voice.
can I answer the question? I actually have two questions. First question, right? Not do voiceovers. We were talking about how nice your voices were. Apparently, I don't have that nice voice. I've just been told by my colleague. Thank you so much. My first question is, do we have to vote on something before the end of this fiscal year? Like, do we have to vote or else this gets returned?
To encumber these funds.
That
more specific, yeah.
that is super helpful. So basically, we're talking about, like, we have to vote in the next 10 days of what to do with this meeting, right? Or else it goes back to 10. Two, it would be helpful, I don't know if there's any way to find this out, to know if the town was planning or had allocated ESSER funds towards either the playground or the loop, because what I wouldn't want to do is say, okay, we won't pay for the roof because we're going to pay for the loop and playground, and then have the town be like, but we already allocated 50,000 for that, so we're not going to take that. And then we're just like, it just becomes super complicated with 10 days left in the fiscal year. Does that make sense?
It does. We have not brought up the kindergarten playground or the loop yet to the town, and we actually, that's why they don't even have a number next to them, because we're just trying to put them on your radar. We're not even sure that fixing the kindergarten playground right now next year is the best use of money without knowing what we're doing with building ideas and roof replacement that's gonna be over in that area, and scaffolding, and like, we're just saying it's going to need to happen soon, but we don't even believe, honestly, that next year's the year to do it. So
For the
we brought
kindergarten.
it to the town.
Got it. I do know, we for sure brought the loop to the town. I don't know where it landed with the town, but if the town is aware that the loop, and I do remember them saying, yes, we can allocate some of our ESSER funds towards that. So, but no matter how the voting is here, we should follow up on it.
The last time
For sure.
the last time I asked, the town about that, I was told that the committee hadn't made a final decision about which playgrounds and which public areas that money was going to go to.
When did they say that?
I don't have my.
Like it's 6 months ago, a year ago?
Yeah, with it, maybe January, February. Yeah.
Be worth following. Because they're gonna have to make a decision soon.
Aaron, I asked this question. April,
Eight.
where I raised it, and I think I raised it at the May meeting.
Yeah, I think maybe, okay, so then Jay, if it was April, then I probably brought it up
April,
in.
Because I asked again in the May meeting. Because
Yeah.
that's very important, please, because again, given it's a town asset, they did say to us at the time, on the last round of funding, they took it out. And they said, oh, ESSA funding could be used for that. And I believe I read somewhere in one of the town newspapers that there was this discussion that the funds were being allocated for the loop because people use those. They walk dogs, they played on the tennis court.
I mean, last year, I brought it up at, one of the town, meetings. And then Jonathan followed up with a letter asking, yes, well, I mean, I have a copy of it. So, and then when I re-asked the question, it was that committee hadn't come to a decision. I'll check my notes for you, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to give you the idea of the order of magnitude for the education specifications study.
Oh, we know.
So it's about 15 to 20,000 for that. So that could replace this 20,000 at the bottom, return to town. So I wanted to I don't know if I just said that before. or put that out there.
Push to feel comfortable and I'm not gonna go, like, if there's something I don't know
no.
about out there,
Right.
then I'll be in the hole or, whatever. I have grants that I could.
I understand.
Yeah,
We
but
can
it had
get
to-
down to zero. I gotcha. But I just wanted the board to understand that that was the order of magnitude for that study.
Is it possible to not return any funds to the town?
If we can land on a dime, yeah.
I mean, I thought that's what they asked us to do, to use our excess
Because I
fund.
To do the architectural engineering services for the roof replacement, that we knew that there were other needs that we were going to have to use the surplus. So, I mean, I don't know that we need. I'd like to not return any money to the town and use the money for the needs in the school right now. Do we have to be specific about each of those things that we encumber those funds for?
I would think this, at least have to have a suggested use or a.
So, yeah, so I believe that we can give you guys this information and these ideas and these groups, and we can approve a number. And we would stay within the number and do what we can do, but we wouldn't be adding a whole bunch of new vendors and new ideas. Like, this
Right.
is what we're working off from. That's why we prepared this information. So it's, I don't think we're approving individual, but we cannot really
Right,
approve
if the
individual
PA system
monies.
comes in more.
Right.
We're gonna take
Little
something
less
away
here,
from security,
Right, but it
from.
wouldn't fly within
Right,
the
that was my point.
topic.
Okay.
I
Is
can,
what it is.
I think then where that's concerned, then if something needs to slide, I think that the architectural engineering,
That we would.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, if we come up with, if the
town.
system, right, if the PA system comes in over and the ed spec study, because the town gives us other buildings to look at, to include in that ed spec study, because we're gonna need somewhere to put students, and it comes in slightly higher, it should come out of that 95,000, because that is. the
I'm
capital
okay with that,
budget.
but I'm hearing you say none, so I, whatever.
Thinking the A system could, we might suddenly find out it's better to get the upgrade and get more done than less, because we're gonna have to do more in 2 years' time. We'll spend the money now and not worry for the next 4 or 5 years. So that's the way I'm thinking it. That's one part of it. The other part of it, I think your explanation of the playground was excellent. I think that makes sense to us. I would have liked to sort of some follow-up on the town, because there is a liability issue out there. If somebody does fall and it hasn't been replaced, etc. So I would want that to be checked again to make sure that we're totally consistent. But my thinking is that this is an unfunded mandate. I would like to make sure that the board is aware that going forward, you don't set a precedent. And that's where I would want to come in at with this, that let's not do this at this stage. Or come up with some
Language that goes with it.
with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a precedent, it's probably a pretty unique year that you would have $300,000 of salary savings. It's just kind of a perfect storm of things,
Right.
And it's a great perfect storm, don't get me wrong, this is really good.
Right, yeah, it could be on the other end.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Stephen.
two thoughts. I mean, just to say, it is a gesture of goodwill toward the town.
Yes.
To say we have this surplus and we're saying we're committed, while there's been great work done by this board to make very clear this is a town property, not the school board's property, it's the town's property. This is a nice gesture where we have the opportunity to do it. My only other question then would be, was there anything substantial you left off the list in order to put that on? Or for the moment, given all the work of the committee, which said everything's in flux, because I thought about when you said like, would you do the upgraded system? Because I tend to be like, spend the money now, so you don't have to spend it later. On the other hand, I don't exactly know what's gonna be next in a few years, so. Yeah.
I think we felt that this was very fair. It addressed security, it addressed some technology. It addressed the ed specs that we really need to move forward. Because the reality is if we could get the ed specs back by late summer, we might be able to actually include that with the bonding for the school roof and whatnot, right? Like we could, right, we could get, when they go out to bond, they could put it all together if we
You
could
can
get it back
always-
in time.
Give Vito another $10,000 and he'll find something great to do with it, to the building outside or in.
I would say, and Jay, I completely appreciate the perception that you want to get, because we fought so hard for that excess cost money, and there's some history behind that as well. So I completely appreciate what you're saying. And I also appreciate the goodwill towards the town, and we may be presenting them with some other options very shortly. And so we want to create that goodwill as well. I would still say though, to Donna's point of, I'd like a little cushion in there just in case things
don't
move
know.
around. I do think the cushion should come from the architect and engineering services, and we say to the town, our goodwill is to put as much towards that as possible. However, if something comes in a little here or there, that's where it's gonna come from. Go ahead, Erin. Oh, sorry, Jen.
That's okay. Can I ask?
I think it was because they knew we had.
They do the surplus, probably.
So the way I think HF is a good point.
No, I don't think it was, your responsibility. Like, I think we talked with them and said, what would you prefer? And it's all the town's money. I mean, really, if you look at it, it's all the town's money.
I definitely have heard them say things from the dais like, well, it's, you guys have any room when you're operating, whereas, and then we come back and be like,
It's not really.
that's capital.
It's not.
The operating money is education money. That money is set aside, and that really is our charge for the State Board of Education, is to make sure the town is using their funds appropriately to provide education for the students. So I completely see Jay's point in not setting that precedent loud and clear, because that's exactly what our charge is supposed to be. But this, I think, is a very unique situation. And it is.
I do have a sort of mind that says that your budget, so your potential funds returned to the town would be 15,000. And the excess cost grant was 95,000. So that way, there's the goodwill. You wanted goodwill. It was about 100,000 staff savings that we've had. So yes, staff savings and so that's there, that's the 100,000. So I think the account would be clear, because then this comes from a capital improvement perspective. And that way it's the same bucket, but at least we're accounting for it correctly, and that's the way I would think. So it's the same amount. So all you're doing is moving the 95 off, giving them 120 back, but they're writing you 95 back for the architectural costs. Just in case anything else comes up on those architectural costs. They might say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. That way the town covers that.
So then we'd have to have a special.
Sorry?
We'd have to go to the town,
And ask them, and I think it's the.
And ask them to
usually, yeah.
a special meeting for us to vote.
Wait.
No, it's fine, it's gonna make sense.
Right, but if the town says no go, we don't want to deal with that, we don't want that deal, then we've just returned money to them and we have no room.
So the question is, there's no reason why the town would do that. They're getting 120,000, they're giving 95,000 back. It's the same as this. financially.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying there's a logical reason to put in. I'm just saying we do run the risk that they don't. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not saying, I'm saying sometimes people don't always make decisions with logic, right? Like
No, I agree.
we're making,
We've seen this many times.
right.
It was signed pending funding. Signed it pending funding.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion and then that's where we go. I'm gonna go with the total is it $215,000 total surplus? And, I'm going to move that we use that $215,000 of projected surplus in the 2022-2023 operating budget, as recommended by the administration, with the addition of funding for educational specs, with the remaining and no remaining dollars being returned to the town. That's my motion, I guess. Do I have a second? Maria seconds that motion. Okay, now let's have a discussion on that motion. Any discussion on that motion?
Rhonda, can I ask a question? I know we did a lot of, there were a lot of teacher switches this year. Are we sure that all the teachers, regardless of whether they switched or not, but especially those that are going to switch grade levels, have all of the resources they will need in their classrooms that they are going into? Because like when I think about this money and I think about all those teacher switches, I'm like, my gosh, if you've been teaching third grade and now you're in sixth and you've been resourcing your classroom with third grade books, third grade materials, I don't want teachers going out and spending their own money because they've switched. Do we need to take some of this resource and allocate it towards that type of stuff?
You know, and again, I'm gonna speak in general terms, that whenever you move from third to sixth and sixth to third, you have to leave your stuff behind.
Leave your material.
Like, she leaves them, and I leave mine, and they don't leave everything. I do.
Right. Well, especially if you purchased it with your own
My
money.
favorite stapler with me, but in general, you leave your materials. Now, are there still things that
Instructional
they
material,
may need?
not your
Yes,
personal
but I think
material.
that the buildings, have a budget that can accommodate the individual need, and I can see Lisa nodding too, like the individual special things that you really need is covered by the building, and we would certainly spring in for that as well under the curriculum line, but in general, and we're not creating a new classroom, so.
I just want to make sure.
No, it's a good
Thinking
question.
about the
It's a
operations
question
of
for
like,
teachers, Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure the teachers are covered before.
and that's fair, that's the most important, because it affects the kids. But they thought all that through when we were talking about the teacher moves.
So I just want to read, I think lines 2 all the way down, are perfect. I think it's excellent. I think you've done a really comprehensive job on that, on the needs.
Thank you.
And I think that's excellent. It's just the way the funding arrives that concerns me. And that's a difficult question sort of to pose in a motion. Does that make sense?
Right. I think there's a discussion that's going to hopefully take place with the town that, you know, we're clear, we're using this $95,000 that we could have used perhaps on other improvements within the building. As a good faith gesture toward what needs to be really done here.
Could we amend the motion to fund lines 2 down, which includes the ed spec study, with any remaining money back to the town, and then let the town use that? Like, that's money we gave back.
We're
So
gonna
I
give
think
them
we need to
$95,000 back.
So that's what
You
Jay's
need to-
proposing.
You
That
need to give us a specific
that
amount.
$95,000 back to the
Well,
town.
I'm trying to leave Donna some cushion room. So whatever you think is the best number with cushion room, to say that we're gonna take our excess and we're gonna use it for these things, and then we're gonna give you this money back if you choose to use that.
Well,
Now
we
that
could
it's
say-
back in your pot
You
for
could
capital
amend it,
improvement.
say, and we are going to intern ask the town that they then return that money, or they utilize that money for the roof.
So we
That's-
could return the town, the $95,000.
That's what Jay's proposing.
So here's, it sounds weird.
It's like what he's saying.
But it's a question though, of which precedent you want to set. Is the precedent to say that we're not funding capital ever, because that's the town's responsibility? Or is it that we're saying, we're gonna give back money if we have a surplus? And are we setting a precedent with that?
I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna sort of take that in a tangent. If I'm looking down this line, PA system improvements, that would include capital. Right, so we've already been.
Looking at capital here.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart board, they're
What I'm
capital
saying to you is that
improvements.
Let's do it in this. Yeah, it's, should be there.
Yeah.
I mean.
Right, it's so like in a town, this is my first systems. Don't go down that.
I mean, PAs, not just like, yeah.
I'm just saying, hey, let's taste this.
I
Because we have this.
could address, just, I wonder if we can address Jay's question with just some, because I do 100% hear and think that that is a valid concern and think that like, that's a reasonable concern of what our town could do in the future. I also think that we are in a state right now that is one unique and we are wanting to create goodwill. So I am wondering if we can craft like a very clear letter or something that goes with this budget that says, we understand that we are in a unique situation and circumstances. We are, we are looking at how to create a building that will work for our school district and our increased population. We also understand that we currently have to utilize our current building. And that because of COVID and hiring, that we have a unique fiscal year where we have excess money. In an effort to collaboratively work with the town around how to improve our current building while we look towards the needs for the future, we are agreeing to do this one-time allocation of resources type of thing.
So I think you can withdraw your motion and put out term, or you can withdraw your motion and put out one-time only letter. Either way,
Okay,
Lynn
so
wants to withdraw her motion. Is what
I was gonna say I'd withdraw my motion and we could return $95,000 to the town, but I can amend my motion and say, and to include a letter that explains the unique circumstances.
Right,
of
and
this
we
year.
believe that this is a capital expense and in.
So I'll amend my motion to include that. Do you second that?
I second the amended motion of including a letter explaining our circumstances and returning the architect fees back to the town.
No.
No,
Returning no money to the town. We're gonna do it. We'll encumber.
But I'm saying that this is a capital expense, we are in a unique position this one year, which would enable us to
Say in lieu of the excess cost grant.
That's right.
I'd say where actual return is over 100. That's the way I did it. I'm just asking them down because that gives you a nice.
Yeah, in lieu of returning this money and asking for it to be allocated to us through the excess cost grant. Right, I'm saying in the letter, we
In
can
the letter.
reiterate.
You said it, verbally, we'll put it in writing.
I'd like them to know that the return has been 20,000, not only 20,000.
yeah, and I think they do know that.
And I think we need to
I
express.
think
that the
J1
town needs-
is something that we can all go to in the future. In the event that they say, we want you to now cover this. You did it before, that we could all go to that letter and go, no. As we explained in the letter we sent over, this was a one-time thing in lieu of that. And it's all public on record. So that like in 7 years, when maybe none of us are on the Board of Ed and they're bringing up things that happened in the past, the next iteration of this body could go find that letter and say, actually, what that Board of Ed did was this. We just want to be for sure.
In essence, you're returning 120,000. This is a cap for 115,000.
Well, this 20 that's at the bottom here is really the education
she's
specification money.
Yeah.
So really,
So we're
we're zero.
Like, we're spending that.
It's not on the sheet, I'm just making sure it's not getting lost.
So, yeah.
I think we're ready.
So I'm just gonna repeat that the motion is to move that we use $215,000 of the projected surplus in the 22-23 operating budget. Along with funding for the ed spec. Or including funding for the ed specs with the recommendations of the administration and no remaining dollars returned to the town with a letter of explanation of the extenuating circumstances of this year. Thank you. And Maria seconded that motion. Now we're going to vote.
The amended motion.
Maria,
Yes.
I think we've lost Sarah Beth. Jay,
No.
Brooke, Jeff,
No.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion carries 6-2.
Lynn, I did not hear what Brooke's vote was.
She voted yes.
Yeah.
Jay and Jeff voted no. And so the motion carried 6-2 because Sarah Beth had, I think, dropped off.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And especially thank you to Donna and Vonda. All right, Donna, you're on for a.
No, I'm gonna do it. Donna has to go pick up her husband at the
At the
airport.
Oh.
Sitting there waiting.
Oh. Dan, okay. All right.
Feed.
Maybe he's talking to the president. I hope so.
Okay.
Okay, we're to appoint HVAC maintenance service contract.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we put this RFP out and we had, I think you have the handout. We had several bids come in and they were opened. Excuse me, in public and reviewed. We decided to go with Tucker. We've had great experience with some of these vendors. We use Modern anyway. We have a contract with them. But for the repairs and whatnot, we decided to go with Tucker Mechanical for 3 years. Their prices did happen to be very, very strong. And where it's tricky is if you didn't know them, you might be worried about the low prices, but we've had really good luck with them. So, very confident. Yeah,
First
no,
quality.
right. So, their work is great. Their maybe like repairs won't be expensive, so then we would just go outside for repairs.
You want to make a motion, Jeff?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we move to authorize the superintendent to enter into a 3-year contract agreement with Tucker Mechanical supporting the annual HVAC maintenance.
Do I have a second? Jay? Any discussion? Okay. Maria?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And I vote yes, it's unanimous, Marcia. Thanks for that, Vonda. Okay, cable liaison report?
There is nothing new to report.
No,
Other than continue to save the date for November.
save the date for November, and if you want a cheaper hotel room, make your reservations now.
By
at the-
October 15th.
Yeah,
What's the
at
date?
at the reduced
November
rate.
15th and
Nice.
Great, and I will, have my little public service, announcement, which is that the July Oh, I'm sorry, new business. I don't believe there's any new business before the board tonight. And now my public service announcement, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, July 17th at 7:00 PM. That's our regular meeting. However, board members are reminded to mark their calendars for a special working meeting to be held prior to our regular meeting on that same date. So we will meet at 5 PM for the purpose of developing a mission, a vision, and goals for the 2023-2024 school year. And I'm going to remind board members to work on your homework, which Vonda distributed at our last meeting in regard to mission and vision statement. And we'll feed you. So come along.
We will feed you well.
Next is public comment. So if there's anyone who wishes to make public comment, please raise your hand in the participants list. I scrolled twice, I don't see any. So we'll move on to executive session. The board is going to enter into executive session in accordance with state statute for the purpose of the evaluation of the superintendent. I need a motion to go into executive session, inviting Superintendent Vonda Tensa.
Yeah.
Maria has made that motion. Do I have a second? Stephen is seconding the motion. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Just so that people know who are watching, the board does expect to take action following executive session.
On my computer.